Hello everyone, Havoc here. I'm back to do a tank review. It's an important tank review because we're all working for this tank right here. It's the Bogatyr KV-220. Basically, it's a KV-220 that's just been reskinned. I must say it's been reskinned beautifully. Check out the looks here. Unlike the Motherland, which is just a bunch of red Russian vomit all over a medium tank, this is actually a really cool looking skin for this tank. So yeah, it's just a reskinned KV-220. By the way, a KV-220 is already a pretty OP tank, so you don't really need to do much to the tank. I will say this too, if you guys don't already know, one of the very special things about this op is not only are you getting this beautiful tank, but you're also going to get a crew that has a special skill, and these are pretty rare. I think we've only seen like 3 of them on console. And everyone knows about the snakebite crew skill, which was huge for the British tanks, and it was definitely a must-get at the time. Here we have the Iron Mace, which decreases the effective range on penetration. Not as helpful for this tank necessarily, but as far as a crew skill for other Russian tanks, this could be really paramount later on when you're talking about trying to work up this crew and then throw this into a Russian medium, let's say like an Object 140 that I have. That would be great. I mean, the Object 140 fires APCR as a standard round, which means that it's going to lose penetration over distance, and now that effect is going to be diminished if I'm able to make a crew that's strong enough to put it in the Object 140. I'm going to have to put a lot of crew skills on this crew to want to put them in my 140, but in the future that might be an option, especially if we're talking about some kind of competitive events like Clan Wars or something like that. I would definitely like to have that advantage over my competitors by having a Iron Mace crew skill in my Object 140. So just putting that out there, you're getting a beautiful tank and you're also getting a very individual and rare crew skill. Alright, so number one, the question is going to be, I'm working so hard to get this tank, is it going to be worth it, or are we talking about some kind of like champion tank where you go through the op, you get your free tank, and at the end of the day it's a free tank. All free tanks are great because they're free. With that being said, this is not a champion tank. This is actually a really, really good tank. It's an OP tank if you ask me. I wouldn't say it's broken, but it's definitely OP. So yes, it is completely worth the grind. It's a very fun tank, and it looks awesome. So the reasons that this tank is great. Okay, well, I'm going to start off by saying it's the armor. It is definitely the armor. This tank got tier 7 armor in a tier 5 body. With preferential matchmaking. Preferential matchmaking, meaning that it's never going to see tier 7 tanks, which is good because tier 7 tanks would really tear this armor up. But it's preferential matchmaking with a tier 7 KV-3 hull, and that makes this armor really just amazing. So the number one thing about this tank is it's got amazing armor for a preferential matchmaking tank. What's the drawback behind this tank? Because, you know, we like to think that most tanks in wargaming are balanced. So the drawback is going to be that it has the stock KV-1 gun, which is definitely frustrating at times. You also have the KV-1 turret, again, so looking at the armor profile. The turret is definitely going to be one of your weakest spots on the tank, and it's going to be the area that you're going to have to protect the most. So we'll get into armor, we'll get into the gun, I'll talk about playstyles, I have some game clips for you. We'll get into all that in a little bit, but that's just the overview of the tank. The number one thing is the armor, and the number one downside is the gun. Okay, so let's get into right away equipment and crew skills, and I'll talk a little bit about playstyle, and then we'll get into some game clips. Okay, so equipment. This is what I've chosen to go with. As I said, the biggest weakness of this tank is the gun. It is running the absolute stock KV-1 stock gun. So I have decided to go with rammer, GLD, and vents. Those are the 3 items that I felt would improve the gun the best. It does shoot regularly. Here, I'll show you the gun. But at the same time, pen is a major issue. 99 millimeters of penetration with the AP round. It can work at times, but it's also very dodgy. I know the unit does fire quite often with 14 rounds per minute, but at tier 5, the competition you're going to see shoots just as quickly, if not quicker. So your DPM is a little bit lackluster, especially when we're talking about the fact that you have .46 accuracy. .46 accuracy is a number that kind of rings bells in my head. It's usually synonymous with some of the worst guns in the game, especially as you get to higher tiers. It reminds me of the Fatherland, stuff like that, where it's just absolutely dreadful guns. The difference being this is a 76mm gun that only does 110 alpha, so it doesn't do a lot of work with one shot. You're going to have to put regular penning shots into your opponent to destroy them. So as I said, the gun can be a struggle. That is why I've decided to go with an equipment loadout that benefits the gun the most. Other alternatives, I guess you go spall liner. In the 10 games that I played, I haven't really been hit by artillery that much, although I understand that the armor profile of this tank is very susceptible from the top, as most tanks in the game are. So you do not want to get hit by arty in this tank, just like you don't want to get hit by arty in any tank. You could do spall liner. Because my crew is such a rookie crew, I don't even have 6th Sense on this thing. All I have is that iron mace that came with it. So I could definitely have gone with a toolbox, and I do recommend that as an alternative loadout for your equipment, just because you get tracked in this tank like crazy. So I could easily drop the vents or the GLD and go toolbox. It really doesn't matter to me. I've gone, looking at supplies here, I've gone with a premium consumable. It does have a 15% chance of catching on fire, but that has not been my experience. I haven't caught on fire yet in 10 games, and I'm just kind of taking my chances here, hoping that my armor saves me. And it's a really well-armored tank, so it actually seems like it might be difficult for them to hit you in the engine. It depends on where they are attacking you from. And then I went with small and small because silver is kind of an issue with this tank. But I'll get into that in a little bit more in a second. Anyway, so that's my loadout. I'm going with gun skills for equipment. I'm going for premium consumable because I really wanted to just give this tank the best chance I could, especially with the fact that I don't really have any crew skills in here. So I'm trying to improve the tank the best I can and see what it can do, you know, if I really open it up. All right. So talking about crew skills, what would I do? I don't have much on here. Like I said, I have Iron Mace, and I'm doing Mentor to try and get 6th Sense as soon as possible. But if I was to put some crew skills on here, number one would definitely be repairs, maybe repairs and track mechanic. As I stated, this tank, it bounces a lot of shells in the hull especially, but it gets tracked a lot too. People are going to shoot you down there, and they're going to end up hitting your tracks a lot, which is great because most of the time it's not a penetrating shot, but you're going to be perma-tracked a lot in this tank. So I would definitely go for repairs, track mechanic. I would also then look at clutch braking or off-road driving because the tank's pretty slow. It's not that slow, but it definitely could use some movement buffs. As I showed you before, the gun handling is quite poor, so I would also do my gun skills. So I would prioritize tracks and repairs. Then I would do clutch braking and maybe off-road driving, or a combination of that with smooth ride and snapshot because you're going to want gun handling. So tracks, movement, gun handling skills. That's how I would build my crew loadout for this tank. Alright, so now let's talk about playstyle a little bit. As I stated earlier, your number one thing is your armor, right? So this basically, I mean, from the hull, this is a KV-3 hull. It's a tier 7 armored hull. If this angle right here, it's almost impenetrable in the hull area. You can see that there's that green hitbox window here in the front. So you're going to want to have an angle. You don't want to be straight into them. If they're shooting straight into you like this, they can shoot right through that little green window in the front. So that's where your front of your tank is vulnerable. And you're going to want to hide that by going into an angle more like this. So at least you're putting some effective armor into that green hitbox window. But if you're up against a good player who knows about that window in the front, you're going to be in trouble, especially if they're willing to shoot premium. Even at this angle, they might be able to pen that front plate. But most players, if they know anything about this tank, are going to go for your turret. You have the KV-5's turret, right? So that is the most penable part of this tank, which means, as far as playstyles go, you don't want to be hauled down in this tank. You want them to shoot in this area right here. You want them to shoot you in the side. You want them to shoot for your lower plate. They're not going to pen it unless you're at a terrible angle. Yeah, they're going to pen it if they're shooting at you like this. But if they're shooting at you from this angle, they're not going to pen your lower plate, and they're not going to pen your side. The only places they can pen is your turret, or maybe that little window, but that's why you're putting this angle in there too. So you don't want to look straight at them. If you look straight at your opponent, they can pen your cheeks. That's really what this tank, it's all about. You got to hide your cheeks. The same would go for a tier 10 mouse or an E100. It's that game where they can pen your cheeks, they can pen your turret face, so you don't want to look directly at them, but at the same time, at some point, you're going to want to shoot back, so you're going to have to play the game. The sides of the turret are also pretty weak, but if you get them at an angle like this where you don't look directly at them, I've seen it already several times, you can bounce them off of your side of your turret, but you can't look directly at them. If you look directly at them, they're gonna puncture your turret cheeks, and I'm gonna show you that in some gameplay where I go up against opposing Bogatyrs and I shoot them right in the cheeks, no problem. But a lot of your opponents, a lot of your more difficult opponents at tier 5 are the same way. Their turrets is where you can pen them. So, all right, so that's the armor profile. As I stated, this is one of those tanks where you want them to shoot you in the hull. You don't want them to shoot you in the turret, which means you don't want to go hull down, because then you give them no choice but to shoot you in the turret, and you're really hoping to go up against somebody who just doesn't know your tank well enough to know that your turret is your weak spot. So if you go hull down, they have no choice. If you're not hull down, they might actually try to pen your sides or your lower plate, and they're not going to be able to do it. All right. So with that being said, I think I'm going to go right into some gameplay, and I'm going to do some commentary during the gameplay, and I'll be able to talk to you more about this tank and what I've learned so far in my first 10 games. All right, talk to you guys later. All right, let's get into some gameplay. We're on Wide Park. It's a tier 5 game. Real quick, I want to talk about the values of this premium tank. I know when you're talking about premium tanks, everyone wants to know about its silver earning potential, or is it a good crew trainer? What's the real perk behind this premium tank? I'd say that the premium tank silver earnings and the XP earnings are rather negligible. You don't lose a lot of silver playing this tank, but you do need to fire a good amount of premium, and that definitely cuts into your profits. As far as a crew trainer goes, I haven't noticed any significant areas there. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I don't think this is much of a crew trainer as much as, you know, putting on tons of XP or anything like that. It's just an OP tank. It's a fun tank. And for me so far, it's been a little bit of a stat patter. I have a 4600 win rate. And I'm not saying I'm using it to stat pad. I'm just stating that I've had a lot of success statistically in this game, and it certainly is going to help my overall win rate. But I've also been pretty lucky. I'll have to admit that the matchmaking on this tank so far for me has been awesome. I've probably had 9 out of my first 10 games, tier 5 games. It's a lot of that has to do with the queue or whatnot, but it's just been really great. Now in the gameplay here, I'm going to go up against a Bogatyr, and I want to show you guys this scene because here is what they're going to see when they go after you and your Bogatyr. I'm trying to pen his turret face, and I'm not having any success, and I think it's because I'm hitting him in the gun mantlet. Now you see me finally find a sweet spot on his cheek and his lower left-hand cheek side. I am firing APCR, and I'm bending right through his turret face. He finally moves his turret, and you can see I immediately bounce. So that's kind of a big deal there. If somebody's penning you in the turret face, you need to just, you know, put some angle on it, and it will bounce. That Bogatyr didn't like the fact that I was penning him regularly, and he just left the scene. As you can see right here, I'm in a position that I usually play on this map in heavy tanks, except for the fact that it does make me hull down, which I've already stated is not exactly how you want to angle your armor, because it's forcing them to shoot you in the turret face, which is your weaker part of the armor. Here, look, the Bogatyr's back. Oh, he was just getting out of town, and then now he decided he wanted to turn around and take some more fire in the side. Okay, that's not how you angle that armor at all, and that is why bad players will find a way to be bad in this tank. As I was saying, though, it's that they're not having any success penning my turret face as it is. Even though I was hull down, and that's not the optimal way to do this armor, it was quite effective. As you can see, I'm still very healthy. So, now I'm just cleaning up on them. I'm pushing in. I saw a lot of their tanks moving out of town, retreating. I'm sure I'm a big factor in that. So they have all run to the cap area. It's actually a close game, although it won't look like it in a second. And I am just shooting them all in the butt as they run away. I moved right away as soon as I came under the bridge. All the heavy tanks that I was worried about were gone, so I went to AP rounds. Now I'm shooting them in the sides and the rear, so no premium required. Here is a T1 heavy. This is a big opponent to my tank. He has an incredible gun. If he's willing to shoot premium, he's really gonna be able to get through my armor, but he's not, and he's finally now angling his front to me, which will make it more difficult to pen him with my gun. But it's too late. He should have turned immediately, and instead he allowed me to kind of chew him up from the side. So, as I said, this is not much of a silver earner, not an incredible crew trainer. So far, it looks to me to be kind of a stat patter, but that all depends on the skill level of the person driving the tank. As you saw earlier, there was an opposing Bogatyr on the other side. Just really seemed like a dreadful player. You're going to see the stats after the game. He did not do well. So, this is an OP tank in the right hands, and it is just a average tank in the wrong hands. But be warned that people see your tank, they're going to want to fire premium at you, which is requiring you to be at the right angles. You really do need to know how to angle this tank properly. The armor is there. If you angle the tank properly, you can bounce premium rounds. Just know that most tanks in the game, when they see a KV-220, are going to fire premium at you, especially a T1 Heavy. And that gun has an incredible rate of fire and can really hurt you. So you got to make sure you keep your armor straight. Not straight, but you got to keep it angled. Anyway, so 2,300 damage is a lot. Most importantly, look at the 1,900 blocked, and I was hauled down. So I didn't even give them really an opportunity to make the mistake of trying to shoot me in the hull, which is what you want to do. All right, this next gameplay clip, there's something I want to show you right away, and it's something I haven't talked about yet. One of the perks of this tank is ramming. It's an incredible rammer, or more importantly, if anyone, especially a tier 5 light tank, decides that they want to ram you, go ahead and let them, because they are going to take a ton of damage. If you do get the opportunity to ram another tank, they will take damage unless maybe you make the mistake of trying to ram an OI experimental, in which case I don't know who really wins, probably him. But yes, ramming on this tank is a real option. Anyone who rams into you is going to take a ton of damage, and if you do get to ram someone, I rammed a captured KV-1 and killed him. Did a ton of damage doing that. I put this clip in here to show you this portion right here. I'm up against a Churchill 3, which is one of your main competitors in Tier 5 games. And I'm shooting AP, and I'm penning him. And I don't switch to APCR. I do miss a shot here and there. Admittedly, the guy's not the best. He's not angling his armor very well. That is an incredible maneuver that he's done there off the rock. But I am just basically going through his turret face regularly with AP. He's not doing a great job angling his armor and stopping me. But the point being here is that AP rounds can be used on this tank. You don't need to load straight APCR. As a matter of fact, you have so many shells in this tank, you could load a little bit of everything. But I would definitely carry some APCR. Yeah, that's all I have on this tank so far. It's a great tank. It's worth the grind. I hope you guys get it. And I will talk to you later.